You're lying next to someone who chose you. Your phone is face down on the table. The room is quiet. There's nothing wrong. And yet, a strange hollowness presses against your chest. You feel close, but not fully seen. Desired, but not deeply known. Connected, but somehow alone. This is the paradox of modern love. You have more options, more freedom, more ways to connect than any generation before you, yet intimacy feels fragile, conditional, and easily replaceable. You can swipe, match, message, disappear. You can curate yourself, filter your flaws, present a version of love that is endlessly attractive and quietly disposable. And still, something essential feels missing. You were promised that love would feel easier by now, more efficient, less painful, that compatibility could be calculated, chemistry optimized, conflict minimized. And yet love today feels heavier, more anxious, more precarious. It demands constant reassurance, constant performance, constant proof that you are still chosen. So why does commitment feel like suffocation? Why does freedom feel lonely? Why does desire fade the moment security appears? And why, despite all the language of self-love, boundaries, and communication, do relationships still collapse under the same ancient weight of fear, longing, and misunderstanding? You're told the problem is that you haven't met the right person, that somewhere out there is someone who will finally make love feel effortless. But what if the problem isn't who you love, but how love itself has been reshaped? Because modern love carries a quiet contradiction. You want intimacy without vulnerability, passion without sacrifice, safety without dependence. You want to be deeply chosen while keeping one foot near the exit. You want someone to fully accept you without ever seeing the parts of you that are hardest to love. And so love becomes a negotiation instead of a surrender, a transaction instead of a transformation. You learn to protect yourself early. You learn not to need too much, not to feel too deeply, not to invest unless the return is guaranteed. You call it maturity. You call it independence. But beneath it lies something older and more unsettling. Fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of being consumed, fear of choosing wrong and discovering too late that you gave your heart to something impermanent. So you hedge, you compare, you keep silent lists of alternatives. You measure love not by depth, but by how little it disrupts your life. And the moment discomfort appears, conflict, boredom, doubt, you wonder if this means you've made a mistake. But love was never meant to be comfortable in the way you were promised. Love exposes. Love destabilizes. Love forces you to confront the parts of yourself that cannot survive alone. And modern culture, obsessed with autonomy, control, and self-definition, teaches you to see that exposure as danger. So you crave love, but resist its cost. You scroll through images of perfect couples, curated intimacy, effortless passion. You absorb 1,000 invisible expectations about how love should look, feel, progress. And when your real relationship fails to match the fantasy, you assume something is broken, either in them or in you. But what if the dissatisfaction you feel isn't personal failure, but cultural conditioning? What if love hasn't become harder because people are worse, but because the rules have quietly changed? You're expected to build a lifelong bond in a world that trains you to stay flexible, to commit deeply in a culture that worships options, to remain loyal while being constantly reminded that something better might be one swipe away, to merge lives while protecting your individuality at all costs. And your nervous system feels this contradiction long before your mind can explain it. You feel anxious in relationships. You feel restless when things are stable. You feel bored where past generations found depth. You feel trapped by commitment and terrified of being alone. You oscillate between longing and withdrawal, intimacy and escape, and you don't know why. But here's the uncomfortable question you haven't been asked yet. What if the problem with modern love isn't that it fails too often, but that it asks you to love without confronting the fears that make love impossible? What if the ache you feel in relationships isn't about compatibility, but about the way desire, identity, and meaning have been fractured in modern life? Because once you begin to look closely, a deeper pattern emerges, one rooted not in dating apps or technology alone, but in how you've been taught to see yourself, others, and love itself.